Hey, Blue Grit Radio fans, welcome back. This is your host, Eric, out in the slightly too early morning, walking the dog, trying to speak a little quietly. Um, it's probably pretty quiet. I could probably talk at a very normal slash loud volume and being outside. I don't think anyone would really hear me. It's not like I'm a lawnmower going, but I also have been known to get a little loud when I get excited about what I'm talking about. So, anywho, today we're going to be talking about how community events are an extreme catalyst, an extreme tool, a resource to build officer morale. Everyone's talking about police culture, what we need, our recruitment issues, our retention issues, our training issues, our culture issues, um, positive versus negative culture. That's something that's on the forefront of my brain, and it occurred to me. I guess it's something I've known for some time, but it's front of mind. Just I came back from doing a community event yesterday, and not sure when I'm going to drop this, but it'll probably be relatively close in time. But I was helping out at Calsa Day, where I work. There is a extremely large East Indian Sikh population, and annually they celebrate Khalsa Day as part of their heritage, their history, their tradition in the Punjabi culture. And working this event, one part hiring, one part engagement. I would say the large portion is engagement. And as to say that hiring is a bonus. We have flyers, we have a clipboard. That's not a prerogative. We're not like hawkers like walking through the crowd, peddling for signatures and email addresses. We're not, calling people over and asking if they're excited for a exciting new opportunity like you might see at certain career fairs or festivals for whatever fill in the blank organization. But no, truly it's to be there. And we as the police department have been working alongside and interacting with this large, extremely supportive community for years. For the majority of my career, I can remember in one way or another, partnering with them on public safety, whether it was their parade route, shutting down streets, or just being in the crowd for security, looking out for external problems and all the like. But when I talk about community engagement, some of the people listening, I don't wager a lot, because if you're still following me or tuning into this, you probably get it, quote unquote, get it. You probably get the bigger picture. You probably get that. We're not at this point with our arms crossed saying no, police should be police and doing police things, and that's arresting people and chasing them down and all this rough and ready sheepdog stuff. And not to say that's not part of the job, but it's only part of the job. The job's become much more complex and dynamic, or maybe it hasn't, but we're just finally at a turning point where we're a lot more recognizing of it because of the forefront of recognizing that legitimacy is not a given. You should acknowledge and and I say acknowledge, I mean like not just its existence, but support it more than just tacitly, right? We're a nation founded on legitimizing our rulers and the people that make our rules and the rules we follow, right? We're a democracy. We're a republic in that regard. That's how the USA was founded. So if we just go back to our roots, there needs to be some recognition of like, yeah, this is the police we want. This is the way we want them to operate. And I get that there's a dialogue there. There's a process. We can't just cater to the loud minority. What I'm saying is that as a society, it needs to be something that we we recognize and legitimize. So with that, more than ever, it's about building trust. It's about leveling. I'm going to offer a couple stories here. So people really like a story to drive the point home. I say that like semi-jokingly, but I know it's true. It's just not my tendency. So, but I'm gonna drive it home. So here we go. First story is gonna have to do with not wanting to do any community events. Now, I might have spoken briefly about this on my own podcast. I've definitely gone on other shows and spoken on this, but that was the majority of my career on the front end, and that was me doing the thing, going to a busy high crime city because I wanted to do the real policing that you might see in movies and TV shows. It's definitely not why I got into being a police officer, but once I found that was availability and that was a possibility at my fingertips, I had to seize it. I had to prove myself, and I had to do something iconic and impactful for myself and for others. And so there I was, working in my current city in the South King County. No surprise, it's Kent. I mean, I've said it before, but regardless, I really thought I was going to be a detective. I was a really analytical, book-driven academic kid, and so it really seemed to lend in with most of my strengths rather than the other things of police work, which were all of my weaknesses. Creating this like really confident presence, making decisions really quickly, and being tactical, being physical, being athletic. Like, none of these were any strong suits of mine, certainly not. And for me to drive toward them, I think in retrospect, kind of makes sense. Kind of puzzles me still sometimes, but regardless, I drove towards a career focused on being a canine handler, not the drug kind, but the chase people down and track them into the woods and throw your dog over the fence and into crawl spaces to try to find these violent offenders, these people that victimize our innocent folks. So this was at that time. I was working canine for a couple of years, and we were building up our unit, and I had the opportunity to be the first day shift canine officer. And whereas you might be like, ugh, day shift, that's not when stuff happens. A lot of stuff happens during the day. I think if you talk to any cops, or cops have been around a little while, actually a lot of crazy stuff happens during the day. You have bank robberies, you have all kinds of robberies, violent assaults. I mean, crime knows no time or day or place. And being one of the only day shift canines at the time, you really had the scope of the whole, not just like South King County, but I'd get calls from the east side of Seattle. I'd get calls as far north as like Edmonds, across to the east, like for those local, like Snoqualmie. I get calls pretty far out, down to Pierce County, just because when you really need a dog, you really need a dog, and you're going to start calling, and your dispatchers are going to start reaching out farther and farther to try to get one. So this was the heyday of, I'd say, my productivity maybe as a canine handler. Like, it takes some time to get proficient and dialed in as a team, like a working team, your relationship and coordination with your dog. And at this point, like I said, like I had a large scope of literal land and area that might be calling me, might be requesting services to help in this very specific way. And you might be way faster if you're on duty in a car than calling someone, even if it's miles and miles away at home to get home and to gear up and grab their dog and all that. So, but at this time, we were participating in this Cops in Schools program, and every officer was tasked with visiting a local elementary school during the day, the course of their day. And it wasn't like you must swing by every day, but it was more of like hey, you better have a really good freaking reason if you don't make it once or twice during your work week. And this could be whatever you want it to be. You could communicate with the teachers. You could come in and like read a book. You could come in and help kids with math class. Whatever your thing was, right? If you're more like a background person, you could do that. Kind of move through and help individual kids or groups. If you're much more comfortable, you could plan ahead and do safety briefings. Talk about wearing a helmet, talk about using your seatbelt, like all that good stuff that kids can really benefit from. You could also swing by lunch, just sit and eat lunch with the kids. Swing by the recess, play kickball, right? All this stuff. But I was not into any of it. I pushed back. I didn't want to be voluntold to do this. I was so important and I was so necessary to be in my car. And I literally lived in my car. So that I could hear all the different radio channels in the valley. I wanted to be where I was most readily available, and that would be in my car, listening to calls so I can start drifting that way or this way. I couldn't be bothered with it. And lucky for me, my boss was steadfast in the request and the direction. He said, "No, man, you're going to make it work. You're a very capable dude. Your time management's great, and you got a portable radio right there on your hip. And so you pop into that school. If you need to pop back out, then you can do that." And so begrudgingly, I did that. And it was the best thing for me. I'd become so focused on the crime aspect, the fighting crime, and I didn't realize all these other factors that make you more successful as a police officer. And the largest one I've spoken on in my more recent maturity is empathy. And it's just truly looking at people as people, and it's truly giving a crap and interacting with kids. It started very surface level and, kind of smiling, waving, playing with them a little at the playground and talking with them at lunch, asking them what they got for lunch. But then it became a lot deeper when you go into some kid's class and teacher asks, "What do the police do?" And they say, "Take bad guys to jail." And then other kids are like, "Yeah, they have handcuffs and guns." And then there's one kid in the back who says it kind of excitedly because he wants to say something. He wants to be included. And he's actually smiling. And he says, "Police took my daddy to jail." And all the other kids are kind of looking at him, and it must have been like a half second, but it felt like an eternity that I was like, what am I going to say right now? And I look at the kid and I look at the class, I'm like, yeah, sometimes people make mistakes. And in that moment, and I can still think about it so many years later, that was a shift for me. I don't have to, but I decided to tell this kid, hey, in one line, I wanted this kid and all these other kids to know that his dad wasn't a bad person. And I wanted his kids to know that he was nothing less because his dad went to jail. And that was my only goal when I look back at it. And I don't know the situation. I don't know the crime. I don't know if he was arrested for driving suspended, because that was a thing back then. I don't know if he was arrested for domestic violence. I don't know if he was arrested for check fraud. I don't know. But I didn't think it was necessary for that kid to think anything less of himself, and certainly his situation, or for the other kids to do so. And then we got into that a little bit. I continued saying, we don't like taking people to jail a lot of times. Some people are really dangerous, but some people they kind of need a timeout. You guys ever had a timeout? And all the kids are raising their hands and smiling, and yeah, I've been in timeout, and I hate timeout, and all this stuff, right? So some people listening, parents or not, might be like, man, I don't really like that tone. I don't really like where you took that. But I look back and I recount on it, and I do. I like where it went, and ultimately the goal is building trust. And if the takeaway of that class is that Officer Tung took my buddy's dad to jail, then I might be that less likely to go up to Officer Tung or any of his blue suit buddies if I'm lost, or I need help, or there's a scary person following me. So building trust, community engagement, it can really help you focus in on your why. It can help you focus in on the little people out there, like literally, as well as figuratively, right? There's so much we can do in this job, despite law changes, despite policy tightening, whatever, right? When people feel like they're so handcuffed, and that is a term, a pun that's used a lot, I guess. It's not a pun, it's wordplay. But, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be more conversation or legislative swing back and forth. I'm saying while all that's going on, we still got a job to do. And policymakers, administrators, they can be in there figuring all that out. But rather than concern ourselves with this, rather than get in some giant, some battle, some internet battle online, let's just do the job and let's do the best we can. And so, reminder of who you're doing it for and how helpless a lot of those people out there are compared to you, with your tools, your training, your badge, your legal purpose and intent, legal knowledge. What you can accomplish is a staggering amount compared to the average capable, whether physically capable or intellectually capable person, is just so much more. It can be astounding if we actually stop and we think about it. And I am thinking about the second story I wanted to say, but this episode has gone a decent click, so you get my point, ladies and gents. If we're going to fix morale, if we're going to address it, it needs to be several pronged. It's not to say community events is going to fix it, but it is to say that, if I were police king of all the land, then perhaps I would consider all my officers being required on some basis. And I know everyone hates mandatory stuff, right? I hate it. I hate saying it. I hate including anything near something I have to do with, if something that I'm overseeing or a unit I have control of. But it's just the only way to regulate things, right? It's the only way to really set firm expectations and accountability. But I'd be tempted to say, or inclined to say, I'll even go farther than that, every half a year, you got to do something engaged with the public. However, I would keep that pretty open, pretty vague, right? You can do it on duty, you could do it off duty, in uniform, as overtime, like, your direct supervisor can approve that, right? And that could be anything. I'm only asking for a couple hours once every 6 months, but you could be volunteering. I say quote unquote volunteering, right? Like I said, a lot of cities, if you're in the city, you can do it on duty or you can do it right adjacent to your shift. I'd even pay the overtime if it was my city. But you have people, officers available to go to schools, play with kids after school. Some of these pseudo daycare programs. Maybe it's the holiday season and you want to go to the senior center and deliver food. Maybe you play piano. But even then, I'd go past that and say, you know what? You want to do it on your own time, off duty, not in uniform? Cool. Same need, same goal, and same outcome, same objective, right? If you volunteer, and whether in any capacity, with your faith group, if you're coaching kids, all that's going to feed into you being a better officer. It's going to feed into a more positive outlook on humanity, which is really the goal. We're just surrounded by far too many people that just have this bitter resentment towards people, and it's going to make you a semi-useless officer. It's certainly going to make you useless in building the future and the generations we need to take the mantle of law enforcement. And you're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time around. It's a pretty daunting obstacle to get over. I've had my coffee, so if this is coherent at the end of it, then you should be extremely impressed. But in any case, if you are a negative person on patrol, or even behind a desk, right? There's a lot of cops that are behind a desk like I currently am right now. But if you're just like nonstop salty, if you're nonstop resentful and cynical and woe is me, woe is everything, this is BS, that's BS, well then you are unfortunately affecting a lot of people, because in this job we spend an extreme amount of time with each other, which can be fantastic. I have many lifelong relationships and many relations that I really hope, span decades, from people that I've worked on a team with, or people I've been able to mentor, people that have mentored me. But if you are one of those people just sucking up, that one of the spots of someone else's 5 because you're on a 8, 10, 12, 14-hour shift with them most days, and that's extremely unfortunate for the other people. So, remember your why, remember your purpose. You can better do that through community engagement, whether officialized, whether unofficial, and uplift others. Be a positive force. It's easy to be negative. It's contagious to be negative, but it can be contagious to be positive too. It just takes a little bit more work and a lot more focus. All right. Thank you for listening, and as always, thank you for sharing. Thanks for engaging. I mentioned calls today. I had a couple gentlemen. One that I had spoken to and interacted with through messaging quite a bit, and learned that, he got picked up a little while ago, by a neighboring agency, and I was pretty bummed. We'd almost filled up at the time, and the timing was just off. Human resources can be slow, or just different paces at different cities or entities, and we were not able to grab him up, but he got hired, and it was an absolute honor and privilege for him to come up and say thank you for some of the insights I've been providing. And then another gentleman who, I only briefly emailed with, but since then he's been following along. He just got all wrapped up with his academy. Also got hired, in law enforcement. So very, very gratifying for me. Very, very uplifting. And maybe that's a little bit of why I'm deciding to do this recording Sunday morning. Well, it's after 6 in the morning now, so that's actually a little later for me. Sleeping on the weekend, right? But in any case, another gentleman, he's gonna make a fine officer, make us proud. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for supporting. Your shares mean a lot. The ratings, all the things that help the algorithm reach more people, whether it's individual episodes or the batch, subscribing and just helping us reach more people. I think, like I was talking to my new buddy, Mark, and he's going to be on a future episode that's been recorded, but, he's up in Canada, and he's an officer, and he's written a book focused on officer wellness and trauma, and it's going to drop here before too long. But his thing was, hey man, love what you're doing, heard a little bit of you speaking and can tell we're pretty aligned, and I would fully agree with that after a couple in-depth conversations with him. But his point was like, hey man, it's like you can wonder if you need to be another voice, if it's necessary. But it's not about that. It's about getting another voice out, right? And just reaching more people. We just need more period, right? We need more people saying this stuff, whether it's on social media, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's peer-to-peer, whether it's in briefings, whether it's at their church groups, whether it's a coffee, with their friends, families. We just need more people talking about all these things, having these conversations to build trust in the organization, outside the organization, to build wellness, right? Better cops, better community. That's my thing. So again, thank you. And without any further, talk to you next time.